Starmer and Trump, the bromance continues. Rob Crilly, our US editor, and I will be analysing that press conference. What did they agree on, but crucially, what did they disagree on? And later in the podcast, Tim and I will be discussing the free speech row that has blown up in America.
It's no exaggeration to say that the partnership our two nations have built has shaped the world from the beaches of Normandy to the founding of NATO, to the creation of technologies that have revolutionised our lives. Time and time again, it is British and American men and women side by side, changing the path of history and turning it towards our values, towards freedom, democracy and the rule of law.
Rob Crilly, our US editor, joins me in the Daily Tea studio where we've just sat through that Trump and Starmer fest. I mean, the bromance continues, Rob.
It really does, yeah.
I mean, they're agreeing on a lot. There's a few points of difference. Let's just go through them. So the whole thing's prefaced, as we've just heard there, by this: the special relationship has never been more special. We're aligning on defence, trade and tech. They've announced that massive AI deal. They're first partners. It's all very friendly. However, point of disagreement number one, recognising Palestine.
Yeah. And we know that's coming in the next few days. The question was asked very directly by an American reporter, why not just get it out of the way immediately? And Starmer, of course, then sort of hedges and he goes around the houses.
We absolutely agree on the need for peace and a roadmap because the situation in Gaza is intolerable. The hostages have been held for a very, very long time and they must be freed. And we need aid to get into Gaza at speed. And so it's within that context of a plan for peace, which we're working hard on, which not only did we discuss this morning, but our two teams have been working together on, that the question of recognition needs to be seen.
But Trump has a very different attitude towards this. He's worried it rewards Hamas. It's a clear point of difference.
We have to have the hostages back immediately. That's what the people of Israel want. They want them back. And we want the fighting to stop, and it's going to stop. But a lot of bad things. You know, Hamas said that they're going to put the hostages up as bait. They're going to put the hostages in front of any attack. And that's pretty brutal. We haven't heard that one in a long time. So we have to remember that. So I have a disagreement with the Prime Minister on that score.
Trump kept very closely to talking about the hostages,
yes,
the need to get the hostages out. Didn't really talk so much about the aid situation, the problems facing so many Palestinians in Gaza. Clear differences of opinion. But what I would say was it was all done rather politely and rather respectfully. Like, I feel like with all of these differences, and there were plenty of differences, Trump wasn't really going to hammer Starmer on any of this.
No, he seemed to have been giving him a sort of easy ride because I think he recognises that the Prime Minister hasn't had a great time, obviously, with the Peter Mandelson saga. Can we just quickly discuss that? It's mentioned at the end, Peter Mandelson, and then Trump claims not to know the former ambassador to the US. What's he talking about? He referenced him in the Oval Office.
Mandelson, he is no longer the ambassador. Do you have some sympathy with him that he lost his job over historic links to Jeffrey Epstein? Thank you very much, sir.
I don't know him, actually. I had heard that, and I think maybe the Prime Minister would be better speaking of that. That was a choice that he made, and I don't know. What is your answer to that?
Well, I mean, it's very straightforward. Some information came to light last week which wasn't available when he was appointed, and I made a decision about it, and that's very clear.
Lord Mandelson was in the Oval Office just last week with the First Minister of Scotland. He was there for the big signing of the trade deal. He's been there at other crucial moments. President Trump absolutely knows where he was. But again, I feel like he knew this was going to be a very tricky subject for Starmer. It's a tricky subject for himself as well. Don't forget, he doesn't want to talk about Jeffrey Epstein. So he really just completely sidestepped it. I don't know the guy. That's a question, I think, for the Prime Minister.
Indeed, and he kind of answered it with what he's already answered it with. Let's talk about Putin. Now, this was interesting, wasn't it? Let's listen to Trump talking about the Russian president.
I'm very honored to tell you that we've solved 7 wars, wars that were unsolvable, wars that couldn't be negotiated or done. The U.S. has done 7 of them. The one that I thought would be easiest would be because of my relationship with President Putin. but he's let me down. He's really let me down. It was going to be Russia and Ukraine, but we'll see how that turns out.
I mean, we had Starmer saying, I don't trust Putin. We had a number of questions about it. Does he regret inviting him to Alaska and all the rest of it? No, he doesn't. But what are you reading into that kind of mood change on Putin from Trump?
Yeah, look, I think reading between the lines, this was clearly one of Starmer's key points that he wanted to nudge the president on. He brought it up in his opening statement, didn't he? He talked about Putin revealing his true face. It came up in the King's speech about Ukraine last night. So again, very respectfully done. No one wants to embarrass their guest or push a very volatile character. You don't want President Trump kicking off in the middle of a press conference. But in his own way, Starmer clearly had this as one of the key goals, to keep Trump committed to Ukraine. And also just to remind him that he's let you down on a personal level.
Yes.
He came to Alaska and what's changed?
Yes, and he did reveal, Starmer, that they had an hour-long conversation one-to-one on foreign affairs in general.
Yep.
Now, when we got on to domestic issues, there was a bit of, I mean, he was doing it quite politely, Trump, as you say, but basically he's turning around to Starmer in response to a question on migration and basically saying, in a subtle way, get your house in order like I have, which was there was a bit of tension there.
The last 3 months, we had zero. From millions of people a year ago, we had zero people enter our country illegally. And we do have people coming in legally through a legal process and testing and lots of other things. I think it's very important, and we speak about it. And I think your situation is very similar. You know, you have people coming in, and I told the Prime Minister I would stop it, and it doesn't matter if you call out the military, it doesn't matter what means you use, but it's going to destroys countries from within. And we're actually now removing a lot of the people that came into our country. It's a very hard chore. We were given a very, very bad hand. Millions of people came in from prisons and mental institutions. We have to remove them.
Yeah, I mean, he talks about sending the military in as if this is something a British Prime Minister might consider. You know, and this is one of Trump's big wins. He took a bit of a victory lap there, didn't he, in talking about how the numbers had come down. And the question was a little pointed from the journalist who was asking about, you know, what advice do you have for the Prime Minister? So again, it was set up very much for a chance for Trump to show their divisions, show their differences. And he did. This was one of the moments where you could see the big difference between the two approaches, but done in a gentle, respectful way.
Although, didn't you think that Starmer was squirming slightly when he started listing people who were criminals and coming from the Congo and they've got mental problems? And Starmer, the former human rights lawyer, you would have thought, like, if he'd heard anyone else say that in any other arena, he'd have challenged it.
He suddenly had an urgent need to rearrange his notes, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Yes, was looking around the room. On energy, Ed Miliband won't want to hear this. And this was interesting as well. Trump restating his love of Scotland, his mother from, as he says, the Hebrides, so this serious part of Scotland he described it as. I think he had shared a joke with Starmer along those lines earlier. He's talking about us weaponising our assets in the North Sea at precisely the time that Miliband, and indeed with Starmer's say-so, is saying no more drill, baby, drill.
Yeah. I mean, this is another huge point of difference. I mean, Trump in Scotland kept coming back to this. I was at his golf course just outside Aberdeen, and you can pretty much see the huge wind turbines from the coast. And, you know, you can understand why Trump gets so upset about it.
We don't do wind because wind is a disaster. It's a very expensive joke, frankly. And we got our energy prices way down. That brought the inflation way down, and now we have very little inflation, and we have a very, very strong economy. So that was very important. Drill, baby, drill. And you have a great asset here, and we spoke about it. It's called the North Sea. The North Sea oil is phenomenal, and I hope, because I love this country, you know. My mother was born in Scotland, and the Hebrides, Stornoway, that's serious Scotland. We were talking about it. And I want this country to do well.
I mean, Starmer's response is, well, it's all about the mix. Oil and gas is still going to be part of the equation for a while. Trump's response to that was, we don't believe in wind. You know, he absolutely rejects it flat out.
I know, a real difference there between him and Boris Johnson, who wanted us to be, what was it? The Saudi Arabia of wind. Which sounds like something that might happen post-Christmas dinner in Brussels sprouts. We knew free speech was going to come up, Rob. The Trump gave quite a glowing tribute, actually, to Charlie Kirk, which Starmer stood by and respected, talking about him potentially having been a future US president, and also talking about the commemorations that are going to be taking place in Arizona, where Charlie Kirk lived with his wife and their 2 children.
Charlie was a great person. We'll be going out to a service on Sunday. I'll be leaving with some of the people in this room just to celebrate Charlie and all that he's done. So incredible. Never seen anything like it. But I hope that together our nations can lead a movement to defend the glorious traditions of freedom on both sides of the Atlantic.
That's happening on Sunday. Just on the general tone of freedom of speech, this is something Tim and I are going to be discussing a little later on the podcast, and the challenges that have been made in the aftermath of the Jimmy Kimmel pseudo-cancellation by his network ABC in America. Is there a difference between what these 2 men were saying? Not necessarily. They're both trying to uphold freedom of speech.
Yeah, I mean, it came up in the speech last night. Just a very gentle nod to their shared Western heritage from Donald Trump. He talked about how Britain had led the world, really, in free speech, going back to things like the Magna Carta and individual rights and so on. Look, I was actually told a few days ago by people who understand Trump's thinking that he wasn't going to hammer Sir Keir Starmer on freedom of speech. There are real concerns in the Trump circle about what's happening in the UK. The Online Safety Act, the arrest of a Graham Linehan, for example, for something he tweeted while on American soil.
Yeah.
And it is a real concern. We've heard J.D. Vance really major on it. But when I asked around, I was told that Donald Trump knows that Sir Keir is on the ropes domestically over the firing of Lord Mandelson. His approval ratings are on the floor. And the last thing that Mr. Trump wanted to do was actually make life any more difficult. So I was told freedom of speech wouldn't come up a huge amount. So I'm not surprised when he was asked directly about it. He made the tribute to Charlie Kirk, but he really rather sort of sidestepped it and did make it sound as if they were both on the same page. So I think that was President Trump being the good guest.
I know, we've got sort of President Trump in magnanimous and good house guest shock, but maybe not. I mean, overall, Rob, this state visit's gone brilliantly for the US president, hasn't it?
It has, and I think like we know how much he loves the royal family. We know how much he loves the pageantry. I can never get through this sentence without using the terrible pun, but it really was Sir Keir Starmer's trump card to invite him to this. That has put him in a good mood. He's been excited about this for a long time, the president. And you know what? We think of him as a volatile, mercurial character, but he has got a very finely attuned political radar. He genuinely likes the Prime Minister and didn't really want to do anything to make his life more difficult. And it's extraordinary when you think about how different those 2 characters are, how they come from completely different places on the political spectrum. I mean, you say it's been a win for Trump. It's been a huge win for the Prime Minister as well, I'd say.
Yes. And finally, just to talk about that speech, you just mentioned it earlier at the state banquet on Wednesday night. I mean, it was like a sort of love letter to the UK, wasn't it? There's an irony with the juxtaposition of those who were campaigning for Trump not to be there in the first place outside, who seem to like the country less than the US president. I mean, as he listed all of the British inventiveness that we've witnessed over decades and centuries. And by the way, so many personal touches acknowledging the King's sort of unique idiosyncrasies, but also the campaigning he's done on the environment, all the rest of it. Yes, the King and Trump aren't natural bedfellows. Yes, the King and Starmer aren't natural bedfellows. But both the King and Starmer would have been so happy to hear what he said.
Yeah. I mean, like a lot of us, I often take for granted Britain's place in the world and, you know, the inventions and the history. But hearing a foreign president lay it all out was extremely powerful. And yeah, the personal touches, talking about the King planting trees and preserving the architectural integrity of cities and villages. These are the things we've rather ridiculed the King for in the past. And here is the president saying, congratulations, you know, we're aware of your campaigning. And I'm sure that would have meant a huge amount to the King.
Well, you could tell in his body language he was thinking, gosh, well, thank you very much for acknowledging all this, if you don't mind. Wonderful stuff, Rob Crilly. Let you get back to your notebook and pen. And we're going to be discussing in just a moment, Tim and I, freedom of speech and what it means particularly following this row in America.
Camilla, I'm not sure anyone watches late-night TV anymore in America except the president.
Yes.
And he's very happy. Why? Because one of his critics has been cancelled. Jimmy Kimmel, the American TV host and comedian, has had his show suspended indefinitely following these comments he he made after the death of Charlie Kirk.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
So ABC has announced that he has been taken off the air indefinitely. There's been a degree of celebration by Trump and his supporters.
Just a bit.
That this man has been cancelled. Trump said the move was great news for America and congratulated the network ABC for its courage in a social media post.
It's worth hearing the post just to remind ourselves that this is a sitting president of the United States.
Yes.
Congratulations to ABC for finally having the courage to do what had to be done. Kimmel has zero talent. That zero is in capital letters. And worse ratings even than Colbert, if that's possible. That leaves Jimmy and Seth, two total losers, on fake news NBC. Their ratings are also horrible. Do it, NBC. President DJT. Just in case there might be any doubt as to who wrote that.
Love that. DJT. But in a bizarre twist, the president's words have been criticised by his former best friend, Tucker Carlson. So Tucker Carlson is weighing in, formerly of Fox News, very close to the US president, basically saying that what the right are doing in celebrating Kimmel's cancellation is deeply hypocritical.
You hope that Charlie Kirk's death won't be used by a group we now call bad actors to create a society that was the opposite of the one he worked to build. You hope that. You hope that a year from now, the turmoil we're seeing in the aftermath of his murder won't be leveraged to bring hate speech laws to this country. And trust me, if it is, if that does happen, there is never a more justified moment for civil disobedience than that, ever, and there never will be.
I'm not saying Tucker's alleging this, but Tucker is aligned with many conspiracy theorists who believe there's something very suspicious about Charlie Kirk's death, that it might not just have been the individual involved.
Right.
Therefore, there is a narrative that we need to contextualize with what Tucker has said. There is a narrative out there of Kirk's death is being used in some way, and it might be being used to clamp down on free speech. Now, why is it that Donald Trump is in Britain promoting free speech? And good for him, and we're pleased he's done that. But in America, he's celebrating the cancellation of a show because someone said something he disagrees with.
Yes.
That sounds contradictory.
Although I'm going to just interject there because an argument has been mounted, and it is as follows. The reason Jimmy Kimmel has been cancelled, in inverted commas, by his bosses at ABC is because he actually came out with an inaccuracy. Because at the beginning of that statement, when he says, we hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang trying to characterise this kid who killed Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it. Some are interpreting that as him suggesting that Tyler Robinson, the man currently under arrest and charged with Charlie Kirk's murder, is a part of the MAGA movement.
Yes.
And from the evidence that we've seen so far with regard to what's been written on ammunition, the background of this man, the suggestion that he had a transgender partner and everything else we know, it does suggest that he's absolutely nothing to do with the MAGA movement. So why is Kimmel saying
On
this?
that subject, what complicates understanding the motive is that the online left and right use similar language, and sometimes they use each other's language in an ironic way, which is why the conclusion has come, why the confusion has emerged. So if he says things like "catch this fascist," is that a left-wing person saying "catch this," or is this a right-wing person, because there are some right-wing people who hated Charlie Kirk, appropriating that language? That's why the matter is so confusing.
Right.
But even if his show has been suspended over an inaccuracy, the right has upped the stakes, because the administration is now talking about clamping down on hate speech which inspires hate and thus violence. And again, I in this country, the right is critical of hate speech laws. I think understandably so,
Yes.
because they can be weaponized to shut down criticism of people you don't like, for instance, religions. That's one reason why we're pushing back so strongly against an Islamophobia law, because you should be free to criticize a religion. So why is it that in this country the right is critical of hate speech laws? In America, the administration seems to be promoting it. I don't think, by the way, that the administration is seeking to overturn the First Amendment and your right to speak. I think the point is that it wants to launch an attack on speech which incites violence against human beings. Okay. Now, I think that the source of all this tension is a slight misunderstanding between Britons and Americans on the subject of free speech. Most British people, even if they don't call themselves this, are procedural liberals. They believe in equality before the law, due process, and when it comes to something like free speech, it's something that you must enjoy and I must enjoy, and that means you can say things I don't want to hear and I must say things you don't want to hear, right? In America, it's slightly different among conservatives. They think that things have got so bad, that America is under such attack, and that the left is so embedded in institutions and has so much power that if you expect equality in treatment, what you actually end up doing is giving the whip hand to your opponent, right? So to use their own words, Stephen Miller, the White House Deputy Chief of Staff, who is driving this crackdown, he's in charge of policy when it comes to things like Homeland Security, tweeted, "The path forward is not to mimic the ACLU of the mid-90s. It is to take all necessary and rational steps to save Western civilization." The ACLU is a broadly liberal organization that was famous for defending anyone. Most famously, it defended the right of neo-Nazis to march in America.
Holocaust deniers and all the rest
So
of it.
that's the traditional liberal position, free speech for everyone. What he's saying is, no, when we talk about free speech, that's not what we want. What we want is we want to rebalance things so that the right who are currently suppressed, because, hey, a lot of right-wing people have been cancelled. There's the famous example of the actress Gina Carano, who was on The Mandalorian, who tweeted something about free speech, and Lucasfilm decided not to rehire her. So the right are always being shut down because the left controls the institutions, and the left are using particularly educational institutions to brainwash our kids and fill them full of hate. Therefore, real free speech is actually amplifying right-wing voices and going after those voices on the left that at the very least incite hate and violence. And of course, there's a psychological context to this, which is many people in the administration knew Charlie Kirk and are deeply upset at his assassination.
Sure.
J.D. Vance gave a speech about it in which he talked about how there can be no unity with a left that hates you. It is a war. Well, even if you, from a Christian point of view, don't want a war, it is a war. Therefore, you have to pick up something and fight. There is one irony in all of this, which the left, who now, of course, feel targeted and under attack, are pointing out, which is that Charlie Kirk, when he was alive, very explicitly condemned the concept of hate speech.
Of course.
He said there's ugly speech, there's hate speech,
Yes.
but ultimately it's all constitutionally protected.
Indeed.
So to hear Tucker Carlson critical of this, one is thinking, I suspect were he alive, Charlie Kirk might be tweeting in agreement.
Well, this is ironic, isn't it? Because, yes, Charlie Kirk would believe in, if we can simplify it, the law according to Ricky Gervais, which I think is adopted by the silent majority of this country. And that is, we must reserve the right to offend.
Yeah.
We must reserve that right.
Yes.
And we must be able to give a platform to both people we disagree with and people we agree with to create a forum of debate so we can work out some of this stuff.
Yeah.
That is also Kirkism. That's
Yes.
what that was all about.
Yes, yes.
I wrote my column about this. It's not the words themselves that have created this environment where people are being cancelled on left and right. It's the absence of debates in schools, universities and other institutions. Also, by the way, somebody can be kind of cancelled indirectly. We can have classic examples. Kathleen Stock, for instance, marched out of university,
yes.
By
Gender-critical
balaclava-clad, people waving badges in favour of tolerance and then literally marching a perfectly rational academic out of the building. But there's also associated cancellation. It's the treatment, for instance, of Gal Gadot, the Israeli actress. It's the treatment of Sydney Sweeney, who apparently had a bit of a difficult time at the Emmys the other day because of this association with her being involved in eugenics because a jeans company referred to her jeans, shock horror. So this is the other thing, and we can understand why the atmosphere is so febrile. We get that. But I think what's interesting is the right is going to lose this argument if it is arguing against itself. And the other thing that this is characterised by, this is a step change. The right used to argue, and Trumpians used to argue, this is fake news. Now it's saying, it's not just fake news, but we shouldn't be hearing it at all. We shouldn't be subjected to this. We shouldn't be subjected to the Kimmels of this world, which is a step on. But what I think is interesting is all of this talk about uniting the country and making sure everyone can get along. And we're increasingly seeing now not just the left at war with itself, but the right at war with itself. You're not right-wing enough. You're too right-wing.
Yes.
All
yes.
of, you know, Tucker Carlson now versus Trump. It's enough to make one's head explode.
I think if Trump were in the room, he would say, look, they called me a rapist. They said I tried to carry out a coup d'etat. Someone tried to shoot me.
Yes.
So I have a right to say I don't buy the concept of an equal level playing field, because the left controls the media, the left controls universities, the left controls Hollywood. So the only way to balance things out is for there to be some sort of at least market disadvantage for saying lies about the killer of Charlie Kirk. So there is some debate about whether pressure was placed upon ABC over this firing.
Yes.
Right, in order to do it. Let's take that out of the equation. Again, Trump would just say Kimmel is just a bad comic. Who was kept in place like Colbert because they said the right things, and they were talking to a diminishing audience. Their audience, and this is the sort of sub story to all of this, is that actually late night TV is dying. It used to be so powerful in the United States, and to some extent, it made Donald Trump famous. He used to be a star of late night TV, but now it's dying. So, in the same way that universities in this country, or the civil service, or the blob, is able to prop up basically lame liberals in a job for life, very well paid. That's the kind of role the media plays. And this is just a market correction to say, well, look, you got something wrong. You lose your job. Hey, that's happened to conservatives so many times.
Also, maybe there's another law, according to Ricky Gervais, at play here. And that is, I appreciate that the late night circuit in America is slightly more politicised than we are in this country.
Yes.
You don't necessarily expect Jonathan Ross and
I don't know how
Graham
Norton votes.
No, quite. And we don't really want to know how Graham Norton votes. It is different in that country. But I do think, again, the silent majority has had it up to here with people on an entertainment platform.
Yes.
Giving sermons.
Yes.
You know, it's like his famous
And
speech at the
unfunny.
Golden Globes. Come up here, get your award and F off.
Yes.
We do not want to hear
Yes.
what actresses, presenters in this country, you could point to Gary Lineker, sports people,
Yes.
think about politics. We don't want your bloody opinions.
Yes.
Go on screen and do what you're good at, which is telling jokes and interviewing celebrities.
Yes.
And then go on your merry way.
Yeah, yeah. Equally, do we really want to pass a law saying that an idiot getting an award can't say something nice about the Navajo people? I don't know.
No, we don't want to pass laws about any of this because you and I are liberals. And
Right,
we don't
but
believe in banning stuff and banning people.
It's better to have a free market of ideas in which the audience just starts to slow clap until they walk away.
Yes.
I think you can trust the market on this stuff when
Yes.
it comes to speech. And I think the fact that people were turning off from Colbert and Kimmel before everything came to an end is an indicator that if people don't like something, they'll stop watching it.